Hello, my name is Chudo. I'm a designer in San Jose, California, and I'm here with Andrei, Gleb, Shuaiqi, and Vitalii from all over the globe. Everybody say hi. Um, yeah, and we'd like to welcome you to our session. So today we're going to be showing you how we've been pushing Figma to its limits. So in our day-to-day work and side projects, we have sometimes hit the outer bounds of Figma's capabilities. And in this session, we'll be sharing some of the techniques, hacks, and tricks that we've come up with and collaborated on to get around these barriers to make our favorite tool do the things we want it to. One note of caution, do try these at home, but don't try them immediately in your company's design system library without some testing. We think they're mostly safe, but they can also be confusing to library consumers if they're not well documented. But before we get started, we would like to thank the fine folks at Figma, the community members on the forum, on Slack, on Twitter, and of course, the designer advocates, Raji especially for bringing this all together, Anthony, Tom, Lou, Miggy, Anna, Clara, and Chad. We wouldn't be here without their community involvement and their Figma tutorials and encouraging us all to share our work as well. All right, so we have 25 minutes and 5 of us, and we have a lot we want to cover. So let's get started. Gleb will lead us off with pretty much the most foundational Figma hack of them all.
Hey, Chuda, thank you so much for the introduction. So yeah, I'm gonna show you a well-known zero frame trick. So first of all, why is it useful? What is it used for? In a regular frame, it's very easy to position an element at absolute position. You just put it in the frame and it's there. But in the auto layout, it will always be affected by the stacking order and other elements pushing it around. So how to work around this issue, we use what's called a zero frame trick. It's a frame with the size of 0 pixels on one or both axes. So it can look like this, like a horizontal line with 0 height, like a vertical line with 0 height, with 0 width, and it can look like a dot, like an invisible dot, if you put both axes to 0. So a common way to create them is to use to input 0.001 into the size field, but I wouldn't recommend you to do that because these layers can stack up and this number can cause unnecessary overflows and imperfections. So what you can do instead is just draw a line and wrap it in a frame with Alt-Control-G or Option-Command-G on Mac. And voila, you've got a frame with 0 pixels height. Now, how to use it? Let's put this triangle inside of this frame I prepared. Just drag it inside, and now it will always stay there, attached to that frame. Now let's add auto layout here, make it vertical, and drag this 0 height frame into this auto layout. Now, as you can see, the triangle stays already out of the flow. It's already outside of the auto layout. That's half of a mission accomplished. Now I just remove the padding, so it doesn't affect anything at all. And yeah, you can also go a bit further than that. You can set the 0 height frame to fill container. This way, the triangle, which is fixed in the center of this frame, will always stay in the center. So if I change the text, as you can see, the triangle is changing. The triangle is moving to the center. Now, where can this be used? It can be used in multiple ways. It can be used to create this flag in the bookmark card. It can be used to fix this text and icon in the corners of this card. Also a nice example is a tooltip with a triangle that always stays in the center. I like this example a lot, although it's not really a 0 pixel frame, it still uses align, so it's useful for that. Now you can add some decorations in the end or at the start of text. Another cool thing is strike through text, which changes the line width because this 0 height frame is set to fill container, and this line is set to left and right constraints. So it will always be the same size as text. Same with this crossed out text. Now a couple more examples here in this file which I shared in the community. It's auto layout tips and hacks file. I want to show you this cool example. So this is a transparent tooltip. It's built out of many different pieces. As you can see, it's like a Frankenstein built of multiple lines and 0 pixel frames, but there's no other way to make it yet. And same here with the input. I really like this example where you can change the text and the line at the top changes. As you can see, even the rounded corner stays there. So that's my file, and you can find it and many other cool things on my website, gleb.sexy. I publish plugins, files, other tools, and also leave something fun in the editable guestbook. 0 pixel frame is very useful, and Vitalii next will use it as well. So I hope you learned something.
Hello everyone, Vitalii is here. I'm a product designer from Ukraine, and I'm going to share a couple more techniques with you. First of all, thanks Gleb for sharing 0 pixel hack. As one of us said, there is no good Figma technique without 0 frame, and that's true. So let's start. First one is pretty simple. Pretty often we need to set minimal and maximal widths of elements inside of our components, text for example. And instead of creating 3 separate components for 3 different behaviors, we can achieve this result with a single component. To do this, you need to set your element's width to maximal value you need, for example, 600 here. And also, you need a nest, a 0 pixel frame here that has a width of minimal. This way, we can reuse this component and see that by default, it's maximal width. But we can also switch it to fill container. And also, if we hug content at the top level, it will be set to minimal value. You see this orange line here. I use this technique pretty often in more complex layouts, for example, responsive websites. So by default, you see it's maximal width, but we always can switch it to fill container. Now it's flexible. But when we hug content again, it's minimal width. Please check original file in the community. The next technique is more interesting. I use it much more often in my work. Imagine you need to resize a card, for example, and you want to keep aspect ratio of its cover. But all we know that when we do this, it doesn't work as expected. It stretches only in one direction. And the story began a year ago. I have posted a thread on Spectrum, one more thread there, asking Figma team for solution. And for a long time, no one replied. And 3 months ago, Mr. Biscuit proposed his diagonal resizer solution. That is really interesting technique, but it was not the exact solution. So you can read about how it works. It's very complex. You can read about it in my Medium article. But here is a result. We have a component where we can select aspect ratio, also orientation, and it works. This one variant will be needed later. I will show more examples. A lot of aspect ratios are available, and everything is a single component. But what if we need to place some elements on top of it? For example, text. Let's drag it inside. We see that ratio is broken because height of this element it also counted. To fix this, we need to use 0 pixel frame again. So just wrap it with a frame, set it to fill container, type for the fastest solution this, and we see it's 0 pixel now. And just align it correctly and position it to the bottom as we want. And as you see, it works. This way we can position elements to the top, align them to the bottom. To position them directly in the middle, we need to use another thing. We cannot position it from the top or from the bottom here. But what we need is to use this 50% height ratio. When it's off, it's 1:1. But when we select 50%, it shifts elements directly to the middle. More details in my second article. And here is the final result. A single component where we can select aspect ratio, orientation, and even replace these placeholders with needed element. Just drag and drop them, holding Option Command key, and you can see that we are building a beautiful video player that keeps its aspect ratio. Original file is in community. And last but not least, please have fun with bricks in Figma. A lot of bricks, a lot of colors are also available. Thank you for watching, and welcome back Chudo with his awesome techniques.
Awesome. Thank you, Vitalii. I love those bricks. Yes, you'll see in a bit. So my name again is Chudo. I'm a designer at Intuit, soon to be at Terraformation, and I'll be talking about some useful auto layout techniques. And Vitalii, that spectrum thread you mentioned, I still remember the day you posted your solution on Medium because I saved that thread in Slack, as you'll see. So it was that spectrum thread about aspect ratio where I first ran into the speakers you see in the session. Andrei and Shuaiqi, I think, were in that thread. And if you look at this Slack from July of last year, you'll see Gleb chimes in, and I share my file here. And Raji is encouraging us. And then Solocub a month later, okay, Vitalii, he comes in and says, hey, you guys were headed in the right direction with that diagonal stretching thing, but I found a better solution, and here's a Medium article to go along with it. And then we go on for a little bit about overlays. Yeah, and at the end, we were all happy with the result. And really, this is just to stress how valuable the community has been for all of us, where you have an official channel to publish your files. It brings us all together to share our ideas and solutions and build upon each other's work. So definitely join all the community channels at Figma now that it's open to everybody, if you haven't already. And speaking of that spacer hack, yeah, so here's a problem I run into. When I'm creating components in libraries, it can be difficult to allow instances to be resized precisely. But this reusable spacer technique lets designers resize any instance down to the pixel. So here is the spacer, and I've zoomed in to show you its construction. You'll notice that there's two auto layout frames inside, one for horizontal and vertical, and I've added endpoints. And if I adjust the spacing in between, you'll notice that the size changes. And because you can adjust the spacing between of instances and override them, as you see here, what I've done is using that same zero frame technique, I've reduced the mechanism down to 0. And now I can place this spacer into any main component where I want pixel level control of instances. So here is an example with a slider. Here's a spacer. And now I can override the width here. And here's another example with a table. So I use tables quite a bit with work. So I'll create a main component, and then I will use its instances everywhere on my screens. And that way, any changes to the table get applied to the instance, as you'll see below. And that's great. It's super useful. But there'll be times where I need to resize instances for alternate layouts. And here you'll see I set up a couple of the columns to fill container, and it's doing what I want. But if I resize a small width, it starts looking kind of scrunched up. What I've done is I've snuck in a resizable spacer in the part name column, and now I can adjust that and override that in the instance, and be able to get a lot more refined layout for instances. So that's pretty cool. Next, a completely different problem. So auto layout stacking. Figma binds layer order to the stacking order, but not in the way that you might expect. So you'll notice in this stack of select elements, color is at the top here, but it's on the bottom of the layer stack layer panel. And if I move this down, you'll notice the color layer is moving up to the top layer panel. And that's just how it works in Figma right now. It's not a big deal until you need to overlay things on top of each other in the same stack. So I have an example with a shiny new interactive component I've set up. So here's a select with a menu. But if I click on the color dropdown, it gets hidden behind the select and part dropdowns. And that's because, like I said, color is undersized in part in the layer order. So what I found is, in order to fix this, I can take this container, flip it 180, and then flip its children back, and then reorder to match the original layout. Here we go. And so now it sits on top as I expected. So that's pretty cool. And really, this is just one way to match the layer order with the stacking order. It's a little, it repositions the XY coordinates a bit, so you have to be careful. But I've used the same layer, the double 180 trick on this brick stack that Vitalii has shared, and definitely check that file out. But here I have a main component with an instance, and by using that layer, the double 180 lets me do this, and then kind of bring it all together with the adjustable spacer. I can create cool little exploded views at the instance level. Cool. All right, thank you very much. Up next is Andrei. He'll be taking us through resizing layers in instances.
Thank you, Chudo. That was amazing. Hello, everybody. My name is Andrei Iancu. I'm an UI UX designer at Spartex Software, and today I'll show you a way to resize layers that are part of an instance, some use cases for this technique, and the side project where I pushed interactive components to its limits. I'll start with the resizing technique, where I prepare the component that has auto layout applied with hug in both directions, and an instance inside it to replace later. In Figma, the size properties for instances inner layers are disabled. So I try to replace the inner instance and then resize it. This to fix this, you need to apply auto layout, then resize the inner frame. This can be easily extended to variants and get grid-based visuals and even stack them together. This technique can be used to quickly generate and preview patterns. I'll not create a pattern from scratch, but I'll fix this one quickly. I'm using Automator to do so. Now I'm moving between siblings and resizing the parent frame with the selection. This may also be useful to define sizes for UI elements like avatars, icons in the design system library, in order to reduce the number of components you have to maintain. By doing so, you'll also get faster and more consistent results, as you don't need to spend time setting the size every time, and works inside instances. There is no need to show the layer structure for this one, because this can be easily seen in the community file. So I'll jump directly to the results, where I'll use the template component. First, I replace the dummy with a more better one, then quickly populate them using some magic. And let's see what we can do with this instance. First, we can see that we have a new way to set the max width. Let me change it. Now we can simulate a flexbox-like behavior. As a small note, in the file is only 2 columns, but this can be extended easily to any number. You can also see that we can even mirror elements by changing the layer name in the variants. And this can be useful to see the right to left version of a design. Also, we can use a plugin called Instance Utils made by Shuaiqi to change the layer's position inside an instance. Let me select them. I changed the position with the Shuaiqi. In my last topic, I followed Vitali's advice to have fun literally, and I create my first maze directly in Figma using interactive components. The file is available in the community, but let's take a look only at the first level to not spoil it too much. Here are a few techniques you'll find in this game. First, you'll have a very basic collision detection system. A way to prevent people to navigate between screens using the arrow keys. And also many animations. Animate by using a mask, changing the layer name, using auto layout, and also using variants. You'll also find a way to optimize assets for prototype, for bigger prototype like this one. This is all from me, and the next one that will blow your mind with very creative hacks is Shuaiqi, also known as Mr. Biscuit. Thanks, bye.
All right, so thank you so much, Andrei. That was absolutely outrageous what you did there. Hello, everybody. My name is Shuaiqi. I go by the name Mr. Biscuit in the community. And today I got you some of my most applied tricks I used to make Figma work the way I want it to. So without further ado, let's get to inline tags. So this example you're seeing here is made by Andrei from Chile. And the idea is that you want to have tags to move along with your paragraph. Boom, like this. I mean, that's sick, right? And it also works on typing, of course. The only problem with this is that you can see here, he's got a main component nested inside of a union, which is a little bit hard for you to understand. So I made a little optimization on this layer hierarchy. I get rid of the main component. Now it's easier for you to understand and wrap your head around it. Of course, it has the same behavior. And this is available in the community for you to download. It's very portable. Next, let's talk about flex wrap. So if you know CSS, this will replicate the exact behavior, which is that if the items doesn't have enough horizontal space in its container, it'll get dropped to the next line like this. So, and it also works live as you are typing, of course. And this is just crazy. Yeah. And all right, file system community for you to check out. It's not very hard. All right, so I've got a big one coming up for you. It's called layout block. Now for layout block, this is a technique I use very heavily at work. So the idea is that when you are having instances that are nested inside of other instances, as you can see here, and you want to modify the layer structure inside of the instance without having to detach the parenting instance. Well, how can you do that? Normally you cannot. Well, since I'm using a layout block, I can do that. You see, I can modify the layout however I want, and I can drop and replace any instance with my own liking. So for example, if I want to have 5 vertical blocks, I can have that. So besides, I don't know if you've noticed that as my tags are changing, this donut chart right here is responding, and it is actually resizing in accordance to its own original aspect ratio. Now, this is a very recent technique that I found, which will come in handy if you're making a data visualization screen like this one. Let's say instead of this kind of behavior, you will want the donut chart to remain in its own 1:1 aspect ratio. So let's say if I want to replace this portion with the donut chart, I can do that. You can see here the container is not exactly a 1:1 ratio, but the donut chart, regardless, is retaining in its original aspect ratio. And as I duplicate more of it, it is getting smaller, but still maintaining its original aspect ratio. Now, these are not images. These are actually working components that I can change live. See, yeah, this is mind-blowing, guys, once I discovered this. Now, next up, we have a very interesting little technique called bidirectional hugging. It's quite interesting, and it is very cute. The idea is that when you want to have items nested inside of a auto layout frame to fill on its content, to fill on its container, I'm sorry, and while having the container hugging on the content, as you can see, it's not going to work. Why? Because the mechanism is simply counteracting each other. What if that's something you really want to happen? Well, that's when you got to think outside of the box. So right now I'm going to drag the content outside of the container and nest it inside of a new container, and set it to fill container, and then drag it back to the old container. And voila, you see it's filling the container on all sides, and the container is hugging it. So this is bidirectional hugging. Well, how is it useful in practice? Here's a drop-down menu I've made year ago, and each item inside of here you can see is filling the container, while the container as a whole is hugging on its content. So the behavior you will get with this is that if the item is getting longer, other items will follow. You see, and because they're filling the container, of course, and if the container is stretching, all the items will still follow. So this is very useful on a menu and also on a let's say a table column. Yeah, please check it out. Everything is in the community file. And last but not least, we've made a plugin called World Clock while preparing for config. So this one is gonna come in handy if your team is not located in the same spot on the globe and you still want to know what's the exact time of my teammates. So yeah, this is very useful. And after all, the most valuable resource you can have as a designer is to have a bunch of like-minded people urging each other forward, right? So that's about it for me. Back to you, Chudo.
Wow, thank you, Shuaiqi, Mr. Biscuit. That was amazing. And we'd like to also thank everybody for attending. Please check out our info on the config website to get the links to our Figma Community profiles where we post these files if you'd like to take a closer look. And yeah, find us on the community. Andrei, Gleb, Shuaiqi, Vitalii. We're all on Slack and Twitter. Gleb practically lives on the forum. And we just created, or actually Gleb created a Friends of Figma group for hackers, so join that too. And yeah, we encourage you to share your ideas, your problems, your solutions, and who knows, you may meet people who you'll end up presenting together at config. So yeah, we'll pass it back to Anthony and Krista. Thank you again.